Control your thoughts before they control you is not just a motivational line, it is a life principle that quietly decides whether a person rises or remains stuck, because your brain believes what you repeat, not what is true or false, and every thought you allow to stay becomes a command your mind follows without questioning, which is why fear grows stronger when you repeat it, doubt feels heavier when you replay it, and excuses slowly turn into habits that weaken your confidence and steal your courage, often without you even noticing it happening. As most people do not lose their direction because life is unfair or opportunities are missing, but because their inner dialogue is untrained and constantly focused on problems instead of possibilities, telling them they are not ready, not capable, or not meant for more. And when the mind hears these messages again and again, it accepts them as facts and shapes your emotions, actions, and decisions around them, making you hesitate when you should act, quit when you should persist, and settle when you should grow. But the moment you become aware of this process, everything begins to change, because you realize that thoughts are not commands, they are suggestions, and you have the power to choose which ones you accept and which ones you replace. And when you start guiding your mind gently but consistently towards solutions instead of problems, your brain slowly rewires itself to look for strength instead of fear, learning instead of failure, and effort instead of excuses. So instead of saying, I can't do this, you begin to say, I'm learning how to do this. Instead of saying, I always fail, you say, this is part of my growth, and these small shifts may feel insignificant at first. But repetition gives them power, because the mind learns through what it hears most often, and over time, this new inner language changes how you respond to challenges, how you handle pressure, and how you see yourself during difficult moments, making you calmer in chaos, stronger in uncertainty, and more focused in discomfort, not because life suddenly becomes easy, but because your thinking becomes disciplined, and when you control your thoughts, you control your emotional reactions, and when you control your emotional reactions, you control your behavior, which ultimately controls your direction in life. So instead of being trapped by fear-driven thinking that looks for reasons to stop, you develop solution-driven thinking that looks for ways to move forward. Understanding that progress does not require perfect confidence, only consistent mental training, and this is where true transformation happens. Quietly and gradually, as your mind stops being your enemy and becomes your strongest ally, proving that the greatest victory is not over the world, but over the thoughts that once held you back. Discipline the mind, not just the body, is the foundation of real success, because success is not built on motivation, which comes and goes with mood and comfort, but on discipline, which remains steady even when energy is low, emotions are heavy, and the path feels difficult. And while many people believe disciplined individuals are naturally strong, fearless, or highly motivated, the truth is that they feel the same tiredness, boredom, and fear as everyone else, but the difference is that their minds are trained not to obey those feelings, because a trained brain understands that feelings are temporary while commitments shape the future. So instead of asking, how do I feel today? It asks, what must be done today? And this simple shift quietly separates winners from those who keep starting over, as discipline teaches the mind to act without waiting for the perfect mood, the perfect timing, or the perfect conditions, which rarely arrive, and most people fail not because they lack ability, intelligence, or opportunity, but because their minds are conditioned to stop when discomfort appears, convincing them to rest when effort is needed and to quit when patience is required. Yet discipline rewires this response by teaching the mind that progress is built through consistency, not intensity, and that showing up on difficult days matters far more than working perfectly on easy ones. Because anyone can perform when confidence is high and energy is full, but only a disciplined mind continues when boredom whispers that the work is meaningless, fear warns of possible failure, and fatigue begs for delay, and when you repeatedly choose action over excuse. Even in small ways, your brain begins to trust you, building self-respect and inner strength that motivation alone can never create. As discipline is not punishment or self-denial, but an act of self-respect where you honor the promises you make to yourself, gradually teaching your mind that discomfort is not a signal to stop, but a sign of growth, and over time this mental training changes how you face challenges, making you less reactive to emotions and more committed to long-term goals. So even when progress feels slow and recognition is absent, you continue moving forward quietly, knowing that discipline works in silence and compounds over time, shaping habits that protect you from inconsistency and regret. And this is why winners often appear ordinary at first, because they are not driven by sudden bursts of inspiration but by steady, disciplined actions repeated daily. Especially on the days when quitting feels easiest, as they understand that the future is decided not on days of motivation, but on days of resistance, and by disciplining the mind rather than just the body, you gain freedom from excuses, freedom from emotional decision-making, and freedom from constantly restarting. Realizing that motivation may start the journey, but discipline is what carries you through it and ultimately allows you to move forward, even on the hardest days when winning truly begins. Turn failure into mental strength is one of the most powerful shifts a person can make, because failure itself is not the enemy. But the meaning we attach to it often becomes the reason people stop trying, as every failure carries a lesson that either strengthens the mind or weakens it depending on how it is processed. And while most people see failure as proof that they are not good enough, a trained brain sees it as information, feedback, and guidance, understanding that losing once does not define identity, ability, or future, but quitting does, because the moment you stop after falling, you allow that single moment to rewrite your entire story. Yet when you choose to rise, reflect, and adjust, failure becomes a tool rather than a verdict, teaching you what did not work, what must change, and where growth is needed. Which is why the most resilient individuals are not those who never fail, but those who have failed many times and learned how to respond without collapsing emotionally. As a disciplined mind separates self-worth from outcomes, refusing to label itself a failure just because an attempt failed, and instead asks better questions such as, "What can this teach me?" Or, "How can I improve next time?" Even when confidence feels low, as mental strength is not loud or dramatic, but quiet and steady, formed in moments when quitting feels justified yet continuing feels uncertain, and it is in these moments that character is built, because anyone can stay motivated when progress is visible and praise is guaranteed. But only those who turn failure into fuel continue when effort seems wasted and results are delayed. Realizing that growth often hides behind repeated mistakes and that mastery is rarely a straight line, but a path filled with wrong turns that slowly teach the right direction, and when the brain is trained to accept failure as part of the process rather than a personal attack, fear loses its power, allowing you to take calculated risks, step outside comfort zones, and pursue goals with greater courage, knowing that even if you fall, you will not break, but learn, adapt, and rise stronger, which creates a deep sense of inner confidence that does not depend on constant success, but on the ability to recover. As true confidence is not built by winning all the time, but by surviving losses without losing belief in yourself, and this resilience gradually changes how you face life itself, making challenges feel less threatening and obstacles feel more manageable, because you trust your ability to handle setbacks rather than needing everything to go perfectly. And this trust becomes your greatest strength, as it allows you to move forward with persistence instead of fear, understanding that failure is not a stop sign but a teacher, not a punishment but preparation, and not the end of the journey but an essential part of it, reminding you that you only truly lose when you refuse to stand up again. Because losing once does not make you a loser, but quitting ensures that you never give yourself the chance to become stronger. Feed your brain the right inputs is a principle that quietly shapes your future long before results appear, because what you consistently watch, hear, read, and think does not simply pass through your mind, but settles inside it, forming beliefs, habits, and expectations that guide your decisions every day, often without you realizing it. And just like the body reflects the quality of the food it consumes, the mind reflects the quality of the information it absorbs, which is why many people feel mentally tired, confused, or unmotivated not because they lack ability, But because their minds are constantly fed with negativity, comparison, gossip, fear, and distractions that weaken focus and steal clarity, while winners understand that mental energy is limited and must be protected, so they are careful about what they allow into their inner world, choosing learning over gossip because gossip trains the mind to judge rather than grow, choosing growth over comfort because comfort slowly reduces mental strength, and choosing purpose over distraction because distraction creates busyness without progress. And this conscious selection of inputs gradually shapes a stronger mindset, as every book read, every meaningful conversation held, every lesson absorbed, and every positive thought repeated adds a small layer of discipline, clarity, and resilience to the brain, while excessive consumption of meaningless content, constant scrolling, and negative talk quietly erode attention span, patience, and self-belief, training the brain to seek instant pleasure instead of long-term reward, and over time, this difference in mental diet creates two very different paths, one where the mind becomes sharper, calmer, and more focused, and another where it becomes restless, reactive, and easily discouraged. And although this process is slow and invisible, its effects are powerful, because the brain begins to think in alignment with what it consumes, solving problems more effectively when it is fed ideas and solutions, and creating excuses more easily when it is fed fear and doubt, which is why protecting your mind is not about isolation or perfection, but about intentional choices, such as limiting exposure to negative voices, surrounding yourself with people who inspire growth, and deliberately seeking content that expands your understanding rather than shrinking your confidence. As winners do not wait for motivation to appear from outside, but create an environment that naturally supports focus, discipline, and purpose, understanding that the mind becomes what it repeatedly engages with, and when you consistently feed it learning, it begins to crave improvement. When you feed it discipline, it becomes comfortable with effort, and when you feed it purpose, it becomes resistant to distraction, gradually aligning your actions with long-term goals instead of short-term comfort. And this alignment brings clarity because you no longer feel pulled in many directions, but guided by a clear sense of what matters, allowing you to use your time, energy, and attention more wisely as you realize that every piece of information you consume is either building your future or weakening it. And once this awareness develops, you naturally become more selective, choosing depth over noise and meaning over entertainment, not because you are forced to, but because your trained mind begins to value progress more than temporary pleasure, and this shift changes everything as your thoughts become more constructive. Your focus becomes more stable, and your actions become more intentional, proving that success is not only about hard work, but about feeding your brain the right inputs consistently, so it can guide you toward growth, purpose, and lasting achievement. Practice focus daily is one of the most underrated yet powerful habits behind lasting success, because a distracted brain may stay busy all day but still move nowhere, while a focused brain, even with limited time and energy, creates real results by directing attention toward what truly matters. And in a world filled with constant notifications, endless information, and competing demands, the ability to stay present has become a rare skill. Yet, it is this very skill that quietly separates progress from stagnation, as focus is not about doing many things at once, but about giving full attention to one task, one goal, and one step at a time, allowing the mind to work deeply rather than superficially. And when the brain is trained to focus, it stops jumping from thought to thought and begins to build momentum, because clarity replaces confusion and intention replaces impulsiveness. Whereas a distracted mind often feels overwhelmed, restless, and unfulfilled, mistaking motion for progress and activity for achievement. And although multitasking is often praised, it actually fragments attention and reduces the quality of work, training the brain to seek novelty instead of completion, which slowly weakens patience and focus. But when you practice focus daily, even in small moments, such as finishing a task before starting another or staying present without checking your phone, your brain learns to stay with discomfort and effort, developing mental endurance that strengthens over time. And this endurance allows you to work through boredom, resistance, and slow progress without giving up. as focus creates a deeper connection with your goals, helping you understand not only what you are doing, but why you are doing it, which brings meaning to effort and direction to action, and successful people understand this silently, which is why they structure their days to protect focus. Eliminate unnecessary distractions and work in concentrated periods, not because they are naturally more disciplined, but because they value the results that focus produces, realizing that scattered attention leads to scattered outcomes, while concentrated effort compounds into mastery, and as focus becomes a habit, decision-making improves, stress reduces, and confidence grows because you begin to see tangible progress rather than constant busyness, and this progress reinforces belief in your ability to complete what you start, creating a positive cycle where focus leads to results and results strengthen focus. And over time, this daily practice transforms the way you approach challenges, making large goals feel manageable because you no longer try to solve everything at once, but break them into simple, achievable steps, staying present with each one, which reduces anxiety and increases consistency. And although focus may feel difficult at first in a distracted environment, it is a skill that can be trained through repetition, patience, and conscious effort, and once developed, it becomes a silent power that guides you forward even when motivation fades, as a focused mind does not need constant excitement to move, but relies on clarity, purpose, and disciplined attention, proving that success is not created by doing more, but by focusing better, one task, one goal, and one step at a time, every single day. Prompt: AZ Likhna ha 150 prompt BNADN